Good morning or good evening or just good hi to anyone who is joining or watching live or anyone who's watching the replay. I hope you are well or as well as you possibly can be given the circumstances of existing. It's your girl Jasmine and I'm wearing a button up. Also, side note, I don't know what's going on with my voice. I kind of like it. It's kind of giving me character, but it's giving very, hi, thank you for joining. I honestly think it's a COVID after effect because now, I don't know, sometimes I wake up with like a really hoarse voice and it never happened before. And I think something happened with my throat during my COVID era. So that's just a thing to say. But anyway, I hope you are all well. I'm super excited. Hi, thank you for joining. I'm super excited to hop on super quickly today. We obviously don't have like a new or full moon to talk about, but we are amidst a shift in Mars energy, which I kind of want to talk a little bit about because it's been so significant in my past week. And I'm curious to know if it's been significant in anybody else's past week, if you've experienced kind of the energy of it, and what we can expect via rising sign for Mars moving into Taurus. So I'll talk about that. But what I first want to talk about is Mars squaring Pluto. So that transit was exact, I believe, July 2nd. Or as close to exact as possible, July 2nd. But we were feeling it, honestly, this entire weekend, the day before, the day after. And though we're not necessarily in it anymore, I really, really, really would invite you to be really reflective on what that energy was, what it may have taught you. So for a little bit of context, Mars is a planet that kind of rules our divine masculine in terms of like our aggression and our doing and conflict, combat. It's kind of like where we go from our energy and our action. And when it's square, sorry, I got a notification that threw things off. When it's squaring, right, when it's in an uncomfortable aspect with a planet like Pluto, which has everything to do with power dynamics and subconscious and fears, it can kind of bring about conflicts with other people. It can bring about just discomfort, uncomfortable and from conversations, but ultimately reaction. It brings about a lot of reaction. And so to bring this into sort of like physical context, I spent this last weekend in Barcelona, and for some reason, I kept witnessing conflicts. And it was like a couple that were sort of arguing in the street. And then it was at a restaurant. Another couple was arguing to the point where she threw a glass of water in his face. And then it was another, there was like a store owner that was yelling at someone who didn't pay. It was this taxi driver who was mad at someone who didn't pay. Like, it was just, I was witnessing a lot of conflict. And by the second one, I was already like, something's happening here. And I recognized that I am someone who, anytime there's conflict around me, I avoid confrontation at all costs. I don't like conflict or disagreements or arguments at all. But anytime it happens around me, I'm the first one to be like, that's not happening. I'm not going to acknowledge that. I'm not going to look at that. That's awkward. Oh my God. And so I made it a point every time I was witnessing conflict externally to like witness it and to watch it and to understand. And really what I want everyone to take away from this is that conflict is indicative of a healthy social ecosystem. When there is conflict, there is love for whatever is being defended, whether it's yourself or your own ego. There is a thread of love underneath any form of conflict. And of course, I think we all want to live in an ideal society where there is no conflict, but I think ultimately any ecosystem on any level of the animal kingdom is going to have some sort of conflict. And so it's so important that we recognize what is our personal relationship with anger, how have we experienced conflict in the past, and how can we sort of like rewrite our relationship with conflict, right? I think that when you experience and witness healthy conflict, you recognize how important it is to have boundaries, to speak on your needs, and to ultimately recognize that conflict, when from a space of response rather than reaction, can ultimately lead to resolution. It's so important that we have conflict because that's how we find resolution. If we don't speak up or defend ourselves or our beliefs or our truth, there's so many emotions that stay stagnant. And so when you're witnessing conflict, you're witnessing the expression of emotions. Emotions aren't stagnant anymore. There's this processing, there's this flowing, there's this acknowledgement. So I was really sitting with, why is it that I've been so uncomfortable with conflict all of my life, and recognizing that the conflict I may have witnessed in my upbringing was not sort of resolution led. It was just reaction and anger, rather than like, this is what I'm feeling, this is what you're feeling, we're going to sort of butt heads in the middle, but ultimately we're going to reach a point of understanding or just surrender. You know what I mean? So really important that you use whatever may have happened during that Mars-Pluto square. And maybe you didn't witness or experience or didn't participate in any conflict, but I would still invite you to take away this lesson that the transit was really meant to teach us, which is just kind of like, where does our relationship with expressing our rage and anger lay? What are the stories that we have associated with conflict and argument, and how can we ultimately reach a space of acceptance and like peace with conflict, peace with understanding that we need to express our anger. Like it's such a healthy emotion, and if we don't, it kind of stays dormant in a part of our bodies that will manifest into something physically. So, and to sort of conclude that anecdote, at the end of the week, I had a train ride back to Barcelona with my mom, and we argued for like literally 80% of the 2-hour train ride. And it was one of those things. Hi, thank you for joining. It was one of those things where, as it was like happening, I was angry, I was responding, I was reacting, I was all the things, I was emotional, but I was also like, like there are other people that are now witnessing my conflict in the same way that I was witnessing their conflict, and they're probably like, don't look at it, mother-daughter fight. But I kind of wanted them to hear it, because at the end of the conflict, my mom and I were like, oh, okay, I love you. And we like held hands as I like had a tear. And the conflict, the root of it was love and how much we love each other. And because we love each other, we couldn't quite find a common ground. And so, yeah, long story short, review your relationship with conflict, with arguing, your relationship with anger. Do you stifle it? Do you avoid it? Are you someone who finds discomfort in sort of speaking on your needs, speaking on your boundaries? Where do you lie with that? But anyway, we are now moving into Mars. Mars was in Aries, so obviously, of course, there was that energy of like, go, do, react. This is how I feel. There it is. And now we're moving into Mars and Taurus, which is a complete opposite energy. And it has everything to do with moving slowly, not reacting instantaneously, but rather sitting with, pondering, witnessing, letting our emotions marinate before we take action. And it's funny because I think a transit like this can be denoted as like something uncomfortable, right? Because we can make stagnancy mean something, when ultimately I think it's so important that we supplement going and doing with resting and like witnessing and processing. We're kind of in our processing era. So you really want to move more slowly in the areas that Mars and Taurus is going to be transiting for you, which I will now get into in relationship to rising sign. But ultimately, Mars and Taurus, like I said, Mars are divine masculine. When it's in a sign like Taurus, a Venusian ruled sign, you're pouring more divine feminine into the way that you express your divine masculine. So that means slowing down, savoring a bit, sort of acknowledging how important it is to move more slowly and more intentionally, and to let things marinate. And also Taurus is all about indulgence, all about sort of steeping in the flavors and sensations of whatever the experience is. So you don't want to rush through anything. If you've been going in any areas of your life, which as I'm saying this, I'm like, it definitely is in my 6th house for sure. I've been going in terms of like redistributing my entire relationship with like work and everything. And so now it's kind of a moment to pause and sit still and say, okay, where have I arrived at? Can I like taste it for a second? Does it taste right? Does it fit right? Does it feel right? And when I move back into a season of movement in this area of my life, what am I going to let this previous experience of going inform me about what I want to do next? If that makes sense. Sometimes, babe, I speak in haikus, I speak in riddles, and they don't make sense. But anyway, if you are an Aries rising, then this energy is going to be in your 2nd house. So this says wait, hold on, let me make sure that that's right. That is right, okay. Ooh. Yes, right. So it's going to be in your 2nd house. So you want to slow down when it comes to how you've been spending your money, but also making sure that you are spending your money to feed and nourish things that honor you, honoring yourself. So like self-care things for sure are going to be at the forefront, but ultimately budgeting, slowing down, making sure that you are dotting your I's and crossing your T's when it comes to your finances, all of those beautiful things. If you're a Taurus rising, this will be in your 1st house. It's the house of identity. This is the house of identity and how the world experiences you, how you sort of express yourself physically. So you really want to sit down and look at like, if I have just been at all these events and networking and sort of giving all of my identity to all of these spaces, how can I slow down and make sure that who I show up as and the skin that I stand in is authentic and true? If you are, I'll get back to that. If you're a Cancer rising, this is going to be in your 11th house. So this has everything to do with your friendships. You want to slow down when it comes to maybe not going to so many social events to the point where you're like collecting acquaintances, but rather being more intentional and centered and direct with like the few relationships that actually fuel you back, right? Being a little bit more slowly with how you connect with friends. And also the internet. You want to be more intentional with how you experience the internet. I think outside of slowing down, Tauruses, in my experience, I tend to embody intentionality, right? They make sure that they're present with their meals, that's why I miss Taurus season so much. Cancer season is a little bit ghetto to me because I miss how, just how like devoted to good feeling Taurus season was. So we're going to have a taste of that back with this transit, which I'm super excited about. So yeah, you want to be more intentional with how you experience the internet, your friend groups, all of that. If you are a Leo rising, this is going to be in your 10th house. So this is career. You want to be intentional with like, how's the world experiencing me? Sorry about what my voice just did. How is the world experiencing me? What is my career? Does it actually honor my truth? Does it feel good? Does it honor my own sense of self-worth? 10th house is also divine masculine and like just how you sort of experience the world externally. So you really want to look at what your relationship there is and how can you kind of slow down and recalibrate in any way. If you're a Virgo rising, this is going to be in your 9th house, which I have a few Virgo risings in my life. And at the very least, I'm witnessing some of them sort of go through like a reintroduction to like their own relationship with divinity, how they define God to be, and ultimately how they center their spiritual practice in their life. So you really want to make sure that you are slowing down and that you are devoting a bit more to your spiritual upkeep, your spiritual hygiene, your spiritual practice. Also, 9th house is travel. So if you've been traveling so much, you may want to sit your ass down. And if you haven't been traveling and you want to, you can maybe plan something that is intentional, not just like, let me take a trip to Vegas, but like, let me plan out a retreat that will actually, sort of recalibrate my health. If you are a Libra rising, this is going to be in your 8th house. This is I always like, and I never really know how to approach or like encompass the 8th house, but it has everything to do with our subconscious, our fears, also other people's money. But you want to make sure that you are just being more intentional and slowing down when it comes to how you are confronting your fears. If you are allowing your life to be led by any fears and you're kind of in a survival mode at all, really witnessing that, just your subconscious at all, the taboo, the death, sex, and rebirth, your identity, allowing yourself to kind of be, a witness to the skin that you're shedding rather than peeling it off so quickly. And kind of let yourself move through this cycle that you're experiencing with more grace and fluidity rather than controlling it. Also, you're very pretty. Every Libra rising that I meet is just so pretty. If you're a Scorpio rising, this is in your 7th house. So the 7th house has everything to do with relationships. So you want to make sure that you're being intentional about just like, what do I want in my relationships? Who do I want to be as a partner? And if you are rushing to be in a relationship just for the sake of being in a relationship, or if you're sort of about to embark in something impulsive when it comes to your love life, slowing down a bit and recognizing where can you instead deepen your relationship with yourself. But ultimately have more clarity on like, who do you want to be as a partner? What do you want in partnership? Stop rushing and experiencing just to have sensation, but rather like be intentional about partnership. If you're Sagittarius rising, like your girl, there may be shifts and there may have been fast movement when it came to work and health and all of those things. You kind of want to slow down, let what you've just sort of acclimated, that's not the word, accumulated, all the information that you accumulated about where you want to be in your career, how you want to commit to your mental, physical, spiritual, and emotional wellness. Slow down there and make sure that you're more intentional about it now that you have so much information about what feels right. Now really commit to, okay, if I know what feels right in these places, let me commit to that. Which is so true for me. If you're a Capricorn rising, this is in your 5th house. This has everything to do, this is a great house to have Mars and Taurus in because it's just more, how can you commit more intentionally to play? How can you commit more intentionally to romance and indulgence and fun? And so if you've been in a place, if Mars and Aries really made you go quickly when it comes to, just if it made you go quickly at all, Mars and Taurus transiting your 5th house has everything to do with like coming back to what is unconditionally fun and making sure that you are being creatively expressive in a way that feels good, that isn't for anyone else, and that's slow and intentional. So if you have like a project that you want to do and it's sort of calling on like a slow build or a slow burn. Recognizing the fact that like things moving slowly and things taking time is okay, and it'll actually, just because you won't have an immediate gratification doesn't mean that it isn't worth your due energy and due diligence, which I sometimes struggle with that, so that's beautiful. If you're an Aquarius rising, these are the last three. This will be in your 4th house. So the 4th house rules home. It rules divine feminine. It kind of rules not only the physical home that we have, but also like the home that we return to within ourselves. So you just want to move more slowly with yourself, with your thoughts, with your practice. How do you come home to yourself? And how can you slow down there? If you don't have a nighttime routine that lets your day sort of slowly land, instead of like, I did so much today and now I am asleep and then I will wake up and I will continue. Find a way to like pour more landing into your days, or slowing down the meals that you have with yourself. Just making sure that like your sense of home, your retreat back to self is safe and slow and nurturing, especially if you live a life where you're constantly being stimulated. Sorry, the incense won't, oh my God, it happened. Okay, anyway. If you live a life that's very quick and very stimulating, now's a beautiful time to be more intentional about where do I find a refuge, or where do I retreat from all that stimulation, and do I gift that to myself? If you are a Pisces rising, this is in your 3rd house. This is a beautiful house to have this transit in, because it really is an invitation to look at where in life are you reacting versus responding, and how can you be more intentional with responding. And responding with detachment from emotion and detachment from outcome, but rather witnessing and sort of like logically responding to life rather than emotionally reacting to it. And I find this is also something that I'm working on, really. It's just like, just being more intentional with like, this is how I feel, here it is. I'm going to hear how you feel and receive it without thinking about what my response is. And sort of like landing in that safe and healthy place with what could be conflict, which is ultimately what we were talking about earlier with Mars square Pluto. And lastly, if you are a Gemini rising, this is in your 12th house. The 12th house is another house that's kind of hard to encapsulate, but it has everything to do with our subconscious, our dream state, who we are when we are sort of in the avatar of ourselves. And so you want to look at, how can I be more present and intentional and aware of what I'm dreaming about? Really pay attention to your subconscious, the inner dialogue that you have, and ultimately just like any secrets that you have with yourself. Really sitting with that instead of like distracting yourself from them. I hope that makes sense. Those are mainly my takeaways. Thank you for joining. But ultimately, don't villainize slowing down. We need to slow down in order to supplement our going quickly. Really review and recalibrate your relationship with conflict and how you express anger, how you witness anger, how you react versus responding. And let whatever area of your life that is being impacted by Mars and Taurus be an invitation to slow down in, to be more still, more, just more centered and aware and intentional with. So that is my update. I am going to drink a tea so that hopefully my voice doesn't continue to do what it's doing. Sending you guys all of my love, and I'll see you for this upcoming full moon. She's a doozy. Okay, bye guys.